All right, Bruce, let's do this dance yet again. I have gone and seen The Batman. And let's be honest, I was really nervous going into this one. I have been skeptical about whether or not I was going to like this. Not so much whether or not I thought it was going to be a good movie, but what it looked like it was going to be wasn't something that I really wanted. I am on the record as being tired of grim, dark, miserable, brutal, loner Batman. I'm especially sick of loner Batman. And even in this one, Alfred is in it so little. It really feels like he's more alone here than I've seen him in any other freaking movie. Like what would it take to start getting the Bat family in live action movies? Not the CW shows that you spend 50 cents per episode on, but like actual movies. Where's Tim? Jason, even. Heck, I'd take Damian at this point. Barbara, where's Dick? I want Dick. Where are you hiding Dick from me? Somebody's going to clip that out of context. I don't even care at this point. Let them have their fun. I'm just tired of it. I really, really am. It's why I think that Lego Batman is one of the best Batman movies of the last 20 freaking years. But that doesn't really do much to alleviate my exhaustion with the live action versions of Batman, because I know it's this little side thing that almost nobody else counts as a legit Batman movie except me. And I still feel that way. But that having been said, if they had to do one more go on dark, broody, loner, brutal Batman, and they decided that the selling point was going to be a little bit more of a push into noir, but they were just going to keep it just as dark, if it had to happen, this is not a bad result. Actually, it's pretty good. I sort of file this under the category of it is a really good version of what it wants to be. It's a good execution of the idea. Your enjoyment is largely going to hinge on whether or not you want more of that idea. And the thing is, I kind of didn't. But I still ended up liking this a heck of a lot more than I thought I would, because it is a legitimately good execution of what it is trying to be. Because there are times where, like, I'll see what a film is doing and I'll think it's a bad idea, but I will also think they botched the execution. Batman v Superman, for me, is kind of an ideal case study for that, because people will tell me, oh, you just don't like this kind of Batman. I'm like, you're not wrong. I am tired of that kind of Batman or this take on Superman. But even setting that aside, I still think it just botches what it's even trying to do. This does not. This does what it is trying to do very, very well. I'm not going to claim it's going to definitely convert people who are exhausted of this take on Batman. But as someone who is exhausted on this take on Batman, I didn't want my time back. And it was damn near 3 hours worth of time. That's not nothing. I think, honestly, the lean into noir detective aspects did a lot more for it than I thought it would. Now, first of all, I've actually kind of wanted the detective elements of Batman to be more front and center for a long time. I've been waiting for that because, look, Christopher Nolan gave us Ninja Batman and kind of nailed Ninja Batman. We've got that. And, you know, Affleck was a bit more of a brawler, but it was still a combat-focused Batman. Batman as detective is something we've gotten very little of in the live-action movies. And I've been wanting more of a lean into that. And while I don't want to say that this is positioning him as the world's greatest detective, because that makes it seem a little bit more like Sherlock Holmes, no. But it is positioning him more in the vein of Sam Spade and the classic noir detective, or neo-noir in this case. And what I mean by that is a surprising amount of the film is him running down leads and trying to figure out clues. And it is a competently constructed, I don't want to say mystery necessarily, but it is a competently constructed string of things and dots that he has to connect to try and figure out what's going on and get ahead of what is happening. The point at which I really realized how heavily they were leaning into the noir aspects was the first time he went and talked to the Penguin. Because you think back to something like Batman Begins, and Batman is pushing fears to the point where he doesn't even want to be thought of as a man. He's hanging these criminals upside down. He's attacking from the shadows. You know, I swear to God, swear to me. That was that. This is not what he's doing here. Yes, he's going to the Penguin and he is confronting a mob enforcer to try and shake him down for information. And he roughs him up a little, but not that far off from what you would expect a noir private eye to do. He isn't taking it up to the level that we've gotten accustomed to with movie Batman. And that's when I realized, like, oh, he is in a lot of ways operating like, especially with the relationship he has with Gordon, he is operating like the cops are bringing in a private detective for a little extra help on something. And it plays like that with Selina Kyle filling in your standard femme fatale. And it's a good neo-noir movie. It doesn't just take the random trappings of neo-noir. This is legitimately a neo-noir film. And I like noir. I like neo-noir. It's really hard to nail because it's a fairly self-serious subgenre, but it's, if you can get it just right, and they do it pretty dang well here. So approaching it as a neo-noir film starring Batman and other Batman characters, yeah, and shockingly not padded. Despite a nearly 3-hour runtime, it is really well paced. Like, it is kind of slow, it is kind of deliberate, but every scene that was there felt like it should be there. And when it took its time in scenes, it didn't feel like it was intentionally drawing it out. It felt more like it felt like this is a moment where the audience needs to appreciate everything going on and soak in this atmosphere and soak in these details. And it didn't do it every scene. It did it where appropriate. Similarly with the shooting style, because there are some fancy bits in terms of the shooting here and there. Where like the camera, say when at one point when Batman like does the wingsuit thing, sort of gliding through the city, like there were clips of this in trailers. I don't feel like this is a spoiler that Batman kind of glides through the city at one point. But the camera like locks onto his head, so like that stays still and the background's all like ooh. Or when the Penguin's car gets flipped over. Again, this was in trailers. And Batman's approaching it, but the camera is from Penguin's angle, so the whole shot's upside down. Like, there are kind of showy, fancy, for lack of a better way to put it, kind of film school-esque, the kinds of things that film school students are like, ooh, when I make a movie, I'm going to do this kind of thing. There are those kinds of shots in there, but they're not overdone, and they come at appropriate times, and they are used fittingly. It never overwhelms, and it does happen at appropriate points, and it never feels like it's drawing excessive attention to the way it's being shot. Like, I noticed because, as someone who has an overtuned critical eye at this point, I kind of take a little bit more notice of these things than I think I'm intended to, but that's a me thing. And they're just really well integrated. The whole thing is really well put together. Is it perfect? No, there's a couple of things, but a lot of this has to do with your preferred iteration of Batman. So let me go through a couple of things related to the characters. Let's start with Bruce himself. Well, I say Bruce, I should just say Batman. I'm not sure we ever really see Bruce Wayne. We do see Batman out of the cowl, but like, he's in permanent Batman mode so far as I can tell. Bruce doesn't really exist as a character. It's just Batman. And Robert Pattinson makes a decent Batman, but that sort of going one-sided, it does lean into the tortured neo-noir detective element of it, but it is sort of missing a little bit of an element of Batman. And there's another aspect to that that's a little bit more spoilery I'll get to later. Alfred's good. He's not, but like I said, he's not in it a lot. I love Andy Serkis. I would have liked more of Alfred. Penguin's great. Actually, Colin Farrell is terrific as Penguin. And Selina Kyle also works very well. She's got her own agenda, And she is kind of using people a little bit, but not like in a super manipulator, just in a like, look, I'm trying to do my thing, you're trying to do your thing. Let's, help each other if we can, but otherwise just get out of my way. And it's a good way to take her. Makes sense. Gordon is solid. He's a lieutenant in this, and he is overworked. He's seen it all. We do get the emphasis that he's like one of the only few honest cops around, and you can just kind of see the weight of that on him. So that's well done. Riddler. Okay, so here's the thing about this version of the Riddler. I don't really like it because, like, I like the Riddler a lot as a Batman villain. He's one of the ones I like best, honestly. But I admit he is very difficult to do, even comic accurate. He's not easy to get right. And I talked about this when I did a video a little while ago talking about, where's the fun in Batman, and that, like, if any villain's going to be fun, it really ought to be the Riddler because he's playing games. He should be having fun playing games. And this Riddler, this whole Zodiac Jigsaw Killer amalgam, and it really does lean into both of those ideas, having sort of Jigsaw style contraptions at some points and using a cipher very similar to the Zodiac Killer. Like, they really lean into this. Like, I don't love that as a take on the Riddler. However, this version of the Riddler does really suit what the movie's doing. So, again, it's that thing of, this is not what I want out of a Riddler, but this is probably the right Riddler for this movie. So, as much as I don't love him, and I wouldn't rank him very highly, like if I was comparing depictions of the Riddler, he's still appropriate to this film. It feels a little bit, honestly, like the villains from Batman Returns. The Tim Burton versions of Penguin and Catwoman, where they are not very accurate to their comic book counterparts. And there were some serious liberties taken with those. But they were also altered in a way to suit the director and suit the story and suit the vibe of the movie they were actually making. So while, as in that case as well, I don't really like them as iterations of these characters, looked at completely on their own, yeah, I get why they did that, and it makes sense. Same thing with this Riddler. There were a number of faces I recognized, recognizable known-name actors showing up in much smaller parts. I was like, oh, I didn't know they were in this. I didn't know he was in this. What? Which was cool to spot as it went along. I'm not even going to say who it was because I can't remember if their names ever showed up in marketing or whatnot, but it was neat. It was nifty. I think the only thing that feels like a flat-out issue, other than just a my personal taste or preference in depictions of these characters thing, is the climax is a little too big. Because while it doesn't completely overdo it, it is ultimately ending in a big action set piece because it's a superhero movie and they are required by law to end in big action set pieces, apparently, I guess. But the thing is, it had so successfully leaned into noir up to that point. Noir stories don't end in big action set pieces. They end small. They end in confrontations between 2, maybe 3 characters. They don't end with big action blowout scenes. But this does because it's a superhero movie. So while thankfully it doesn't go so big that it like completely kills the mood that the film had been going for, it feels disjointed and inappropriate enough that it was the one part of the film that I felt went on too long. It is kind of a case of where I'm like, okay, if you're going to do this big action set piece, I wish you would have kept it shorter because it's not fitting. It would have been better if it wasn't there. But again, if it's a mandate, the studio insists you have to do it to have a big action scene at the end, you should have kept it tighter than this. It's not bloated, and in any other superhero movie, it would have been a pretty lean and tight climactic action scene. But for this film, which shouldn't have had it, it's the one part where it feels a little bloated, feels a little padded. So one other thing before I get into spoilers, the movie also did a very good job of playing up the element of fear, not just on the specific individuals that Batman is taking on at any given time, but the fear of the signal in the sky, the fear of criminals just knowing that he's out there. was built up very well. And also, I love that the film, I'm not going to talk about specifics how, but the film does take the time to also establish that Batman cannot be only fear. Batman also has to inspire hope. So he's not inspiring nothing but fear in the criminals around him. He's also inspiring hope in everybody else. And I am so glad that that's there, because the leaning too hard into Batman inspires only fear is part of what has gotten me exhausted of this kind of take on Batman. And while I'm not going to say that he suddenly becomes lighter and a cheery character, like, he doesn't. He's dark, grim, broody Batman. But an acknowledgement that as a symbol, Batman should be more than just fear. Thank you. I needed that. Thank you. That's your spoiler-free stuff. I need to talk about some specifics on one other element that like didn't quite click, and this is a bit more spoilery. So overall, I did like it. I was shocked at how much I enjoyed it, given that I am still tired of dark, grim, miserable loner Batman. I still thought this was a good movie, so take that as your endorsement. So spoilers now. Okay. I don't think there was inherently a problem with the idea that the Riddler was kind of tying and targeting and linking things back to Thomas and as a result Bruce Wayne on a sort of sins of the father basis. On paper that's fine. The reason that doesn't quite work is, like I said, we don't know Bruce Wayne. We know the Batman. But Bruce, we don't really know. So about 2/3 of the way into the movie, where he starts getting racked with these revelations about who his father was and what his father did. They're not bad revelations, and they're certainly not bad ideas, but they're impacting a side of this character that we just haven't had the time to interact with. Those feel like the kind of things that should have been reserved for like a second film, where you could actually have time to get us to know Bruce and not just Batman. So while they're not bad and they don't derail it, they don't land the way they should, and they don't work as character moments as deeply as they should, because they're playing off side of a character that we've seen so little of. So to see Bruce's faith in the memory of his parents shaken, it's not a bad idea, but we don't know Bruce. So shaking the confidence of Bruce doesn't mean as much, because we've been dealing with Batman. So there's that. And then at the very end, I didn't love that, of course, they had to tease Joker. I wish they hadn't done that. Like, not that I'm saying I never want to see the Joker again, but like, the Joker is the most overused, overexposed Batman villain. And sticking him at the end and teasing him at the end really does feel like okay, no, we know the villain you really want to see. Come back next time, we'll get him. I'm like, oh. I didn't look up who they cast, though. It was the same guy who played Druig in The Eternals, which, that's an interesting choice. Okay. I'd have to see the scene again, but I feel like little tiny glimpses we got, it looked like he had like a deformed grin, like a smile that looked like a slightly prosthetic, or like the mouth looked bigger than it should be. And I'm like, oh God, don't do that. Please don't. We had our deformed Joker. Heath Ledger did it. Like, don't do that again. That was like where Gotham went completely wrong with the Joker, when they really leaned into that with Jeremiah in their last season. It's like, oh God, no, please don't. But that's kind of it. This was quite good. So there we go. The Batman. I'm still like, even though I like the movie, I'm still gonna mock the fact that that's the title. This was quite good. I was surprised. I'm still surprised, even after having seen it. Did you see it yet? What did you think about it? Whatever your thoughts are, drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. Patreon's how I'm able to pay the bills and do this as my living. Like, share, and subscribe. Help me out as well. I mean, it's my birthday this month. You want to do something nice. Any and all of those things would be very much appreciated. It's also tax season, so... oh boy. In any case, don't worry too much about it. I do try and take a relaxed attitude around here, so, you can just come on back next time you need a break. Patreon shout-outs. Thank you to Turok, Shane Ross, Oliver B., Melinda Walters, Robin Powell, Phrenobulax, the Poodle, Edelon, Tracy Scrabbit, Dharma Michael Doyle, Vincent Paul Bartolucci, Angry Caspero, Adam Lefty Taylor, Robin Moore, Shayla Gourlay, and Bookworm. You can support me as well. Hear me mispronounce your name. Sure, I got some of those wrong.